Hello, everyone. Welcome to QNN Sports. Tonight, I'm joined here by Ben Kane, ready to talk about some Quinnipiac men's soccer. Ben, last season, they came into the fall season predicted to win everything in the conference, and then they missed the playoffs. What was the biggest thing that went wrong in your eyes for this team?
There's like a big dynamic shift within this team where the senior players, obviously, it kind of seemed like they thought they were better than the other players under them. So when you're looking at the lines between the forwards, the midfielder, and the defenders, there was no communication there. It seemed like there were three separate entities rather than one group. So when you're trying to play the ball through those lines, it's just not going to happen. So what we saw was the defenders trying to ping long balls, and it just never worked out for Quinnipiac, and it was never going to work out. They're more of a possession-based team rather than what we saw this year, so it's just never going to work out.
But what do you think that changed? Because basically that same roster made the MAC championship game less than 5 months beforehand. So what do you think that changed come the 2021 fall season?
Yeah, I think me and you talked a lot about this. It was that UNH game where they come in, where they're playing against a ranked team, and obviously it's going to be a very difficult game, but the mindset they came into that game with was, if we lose, we're not as good as we think we are, rather than this is just a test for us as a building block to see. And when they did lose and they got blown out by 5, they automatically just dropped, and it was just all downhill from there.
And obviously missing the playoffs, things haven't gotten better. The start of the spring Connecticut College Soccer League, they lost to a Division II school in Southern Connecticut State. How much of a failure do you think it is if they don't turn this around and win this tournament?
I mean, we were talking about it's like a glorified high school season. I think the biggest sign of that was there was a goalkeeper for Southern Connecticut playing striker during this game. But if they don't go on and win this, I don't really see it as too big of an issue. Obviously, after the game, it looked like all the coaches were just having a good time, just kind of talking, trying to figure things out. And when you don't have a lot of freshmen coming in and a lot of those players where there's probably going to be 2 or 3 more transfers coming to this side, this is not the team you're going to come back with in the fall. So it's just about getting these players with touches, especially the young players who can really step up into those roles that we haven't seen them do last season. So trying to get the freshmen on the ball more is going to be key right now.
So you think that they're going to try to utilize this cup as basically a scouting of the team as how it can work moving forward in the fall?
Yeah, I think there was 2 or 3 players that had never even touched the field for Quinnipiac that we saw in just that first game, and they played well. So I think Eric DeCosta is going to try to experiment more with them, see what they're about, and see, more importantly, where they can play on the field. His thing is usually, if I can't have a position for them, they're going to play on the outside mid, and that's just not what needs to happen. They need to figure out, can you play in the center mid? Can you play in an outside back? So this tournament's going to tell a lot of things about his team.
What do you think is going to be the key for this team to turn things around and for not to go down like they did last year in the fall?
I think they need to keep together as a unit. I mean, we talked a little bit about this before, but trying to figure out how their communication can stay afloat, really. As long as they don't sink and they can keep talking through their problems, they'll be okay. But it's going to be definitely different with a lot of young leaders emerging in this team.
How big of a challenge do you think is going to be to get over this massive senior class that's leaving or that left after last year?
I think it's going to be a challenge. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it this year. I think this year is going to be the first year that we slowly start to see players like Jared Smith, Terrence Wilder, those type of guys trying to step up into that role. And then next year, their senior year, they really take the league by storm.
You mentioned some of these key players that are staying for next season. Which player do you think has to step up if Quinnipiac is going to have a chance come MAC season?
I think Sam McCann is the key to all of this. Obviously, we've compared him to a like-for-like switch with David Bercedo, who's still at Quinnipiac, but can Sam McCann now step up and to be Sam McCann and not David Bercedo's understudy right now? Can he score the goals? Something that he's heavily criticized, honestly, because he's not as physical as most other strikers in this league, and he relies too much on his pace. He doesn't have the ball skill to kind of get around the player, so can he figure out how to score in different ways?
And I know it's early, but can you give me your very early prediction for how do you think this team is going to fare in come September, October?
So I think from the one freshman that we think was a freshman, we don't really know who he was, but from the one kid that they did bring in, it looks like there's going to be a very talented group coming in. But I think it's too young to do anything. I could see them just getting into the playoffs and then a first-round exit, honestly.
Who do you think is going to run the MAC? If you think it's only first-round exit?
I think Monmouth, honestly, have a really good shot. Ben Zakowski's coming back, and he was one of the key players for Monmouth down the road at the end of the season. I've been watching him on TikTok all season, and he's clearly been training very hard for this year. So I think his team, and especially him and then Adrian Gomez, I believe is his name, the striker, who was very good every time he played against Quinnipiac, as well as in the MAC. So they're the team to beat this year.
You say that Quinnipiac only first-round exit, and they've gotten so close in the recent years. Why do you think this team hasn't been able to get over the hump when they've been so successful in the past 5 to 10 years?
I think it's more of a lack of creativity in the front where they're relying on the likes of Brogosson to pull the strings for everything. And especially when Paulo Suarez was there, when you pushed him forward, there was holes defensively. So it's kind of figuring out where they can play those two. But then if Brogosson's there, then you have Speculo on one side, who's not as creative. So it's really just Brog trying to do everything for himself. And the players in front of him aren't players that can just get the ball and score. They need to kind of be on it and kind of be a part of the play, and they just weren't this year.
Right, you heard it here first. Quinnipiac will make the playoffs, but out in the first round. That's Ben Kane. I'm Roberto Casillas. Thanks so much for watching QNN Sports. We'll see you next week.